But it was this complete lack of acknowledgement for what I actually bring to the table. It was a complete lack of acknowledgement for my expertise, my skills, my background, what had been coming forth for me and how I could help other people. And it just really, when that happens and people are doing that, that's them returning to themselves. It's either returning to their own limitations or what they know they feel like they can help you in this portion of their wheelhouse. And it might terrify them to step outside. Hello, and welcome to the Hello You Show, where big dreams meet real action. Through transformative stories, a bit of neuroscience, and real conversations, this show is here to help you explore creating your next level life with authenticity and passion. I am Jessica Rice, a design techie and former engineering leader turned vision evolution coach on a mission to help other women rise up and lead a life of purpose. So get cozy and say hello again to the real you. Hello, welcome back to the Hello You Show. My name is Jessica Rice and I am your host. Well, today I wanted to dive into a little bit more strategy, as well as address a couple of concerns that I had, even looking back at some of my previous episodes. And I wanted to also talk to you about just a couple of different things for all you moms out there, for everyone who is thinking about how they go and they kickstart a new dream, a new side hustle, where they make a transition. And first, I wanted to address a couple of episodes. I have expressed that I've gone through this kind of spiritual awakening for myself, and I in no means ever want anyone to feel as though they are less than. And so I really want to make it clear that when I say that I've gone through or found my way back to God, that I think it's really important for me to also address that this doesn't change how I personally feel about a lot of different religions and people and who they follow, because I would be a hypocrite if I were to go down that road. And one of the biggest things that I have always wanted in my life and to make this show about is to remove the judgment that I think some of us walk in every single day of our lives. And it's that judgment that gets us down some of those tricky roads, some of those loops and those turns that we didn't intend to go down, and prevent us from stepping forward into the lives that we are intended to lead. I do feel that God gives us a purpose and He's there for us and He tells us exactly what He has intended for our lives if we listen. But when we start listening to other people and their judgments and the things that they say, that's when we can go astray. And so I really want to make this clear. This show is for you. If you are wanting to step out into doing something greater in your life, you have a calling, you're wanting to rise up in your leadership, in your life, if you're an entrepreneur, all of those things, because I am an executive brand and leadership coach for individuals and for teams. I studied hard to get my ICF certification so that I could work with large corporations. However, I have also started to work with entrepreneurs. And I guess it's not all that different for me, because prior to this part of my life, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I was a software engineer. I also had a background in graphic design and brand design, and I worked with small business owners on their brand presence at that time in my life. So I'm saying all of this because I think it's really important to clear the air, and so that you can relieve, if you're listening to this and you're questioning anything about yourself, I want you to know that the path that you're on is the one that is going to lead you into greatness. And if it feels like you're making concessions or you're worrying about what other people are thinking and it's stopping you from moving forward, then I encourage you to lean in to your faith and lean into what it is that you are feeling called to do and find that support for yourself. So I really wanted to just put that out there and mention that, because I think it's really important for me that any listener understands that my intention, my heart behind this show is truly saying hello to you, to your greater purpose, to everything that you were designed to be, so that you can step into that with greater power, with greater conviction, and greater authority in your life. All right, so moving on. Let's talk a little bit of strategy today. And it's so funny because I was getting ready and I did my hair and my makeup. I'm trying some new things. I swear this is like the Cindy Crawford look from the 90s, as dating myself here. Sometimes it turns out the way we want it to. And I think as women, isn't this the truth? Like we sometimes look at ourselves and it stops us from wanting to put ourselves out there, from wanting to present ourselves and the gifts that we have and the message that we have and the things that we want to share with others. And I know for a long time that was a big deal for me too. Is like, I don't want to put myself out there. I remember going to the dentist, and as a fun story, I actually had a lot of dental work that needed to be done throughout my life. When I was little, I had fallen and I lost my two front teeth. My dog pushed me over, and the only thing that hit the ground were my two front teeth. And so I had to go to the emergency room when I was 3 years old and have them removed. And this led to a whole lot of oral surgery and braces until I was much older. And I ended up having to have 2 implants. But one of them, I, cou- I couldn't afford it. Our insurance didn't cover it for many, 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 many years. And so I had to wear like a retainer or a stay plate for many years. Um, After even my son was born. I mean, it was a really long time. It's embarrassingly long. And so we finally got insurance. My husband started working for another company because even my company, the insurance wasn't covering it based on where it was based out of. That covered it. And so I was like, oh, okay, I can finally not have to deal with this retainer, because sometimes it would break and I would have to go down to the store if the dentist wasn't open and glue the tooth like back on myself. So I lived for years. I wouldn't smile. I was very self-conscious of how I looked. I was very self-conscious of eating and, maybe someone noticing. And I know that carried with me for a really long time. And so after I decided, I was like, okay, if I'm going to start putting myself out there, I need to go whiten my teeth. I need to go get trays. I need to go do this stuff. And I got them. Um, and I can say to this day that I don't really use them. I should, but I don't, because I also know like that means I don't drink any wine. And again, I told you, I'm not here to judge anyone. So we live in California. I enjoy my glass of wine. So sometimes it's a trade-off. But those are the things that sometimes stop us, right? Those are those little things that we allow to get in the way. And at the end of the day, I don't think anybody really cared. Nobody ever, I don't think, has noticed or cared about my teeth. Well, now they're real, like there's an implant in there, but or that they're like not perfectly white. I do notice when other people's white teeth are like super white because it's just glaring and you can't help but notice. But I don't really sit there and pay attention to that. Usually I'm listening to the content. Usually I'm trying to understand like what is it they're wanting to tell me, or that I can glean from this, or that I can learn. And so really, what is it that you have that you can give that could benefit someone else? So if we're talking strategy, I know sometimes like the next thing is not only just the belief, it's like, how do we step into that? How do we start creating something with this passion that we've got going on inside? And what do we do with it? And the biggest thing is to start taking action. If you're not taking action, then it's going to lie dormant, and you're going to start to second guess yourself. You're going to start to question. You're going to start to wonder if it was even real. And I know that I face this. I consider it like 2 voices. And these voices often come up for me very early in the morning. Usually it's when I have been asleep for a little while, and then maybe I wake up. It's like at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I just can't shut it off. And what I'll have is I have all these ideas about intentions and things that I could do and things that I'm interested in. And, I could do this and I could do this. And it's like when my brain is finally quieted enough and it lets forth all of the other ideas and the things that have been lying inside saying like, hey, I want you to pay attention. I want to come out. And so this voice is talking to me, and I'll wake up and I'll put like in my notes I use Notion, but I'll put it into like a notes app, some of my ideas, because I know that my intention is I have to get it out so that I can then go back to sleep, restfully. If I don't get it out, I won't rest. And then that way I haven't forgotten it when I wake up the next day. When I wake up the next day, however, that's where voice number two usually shows up and is like, yeah, that was a great idea. How are you going to make that work? How are you going to do that? That is something that is going to require an entire team of people. How could you possibly do all of this? How could you and what you've got going on? These are the two voices I think that we battle the most because we are so concerned with how we're showing up perfectly, how we're executing perfectly, how we're making sure that, that there's value, but it's almost so much that we just hold ourselves back and we don't do anything. But most things don't happen in a perfect little vacuum. We have to start incrementally putting ourselves out there. When I started to launch the Powerhouse Legacy Collective, I had sat on my community for a while, actually. I had purchased a subscription to Mighty Networks, and I held on to it for a couple of years. And then I was like, oh, and I'd heard some different people telling me like, oh, you don't want to start a community. It's going to be so much work. And how are you going to do all of that? And you don't really have the following just yet for all of this. And so I sat on it. But, sometimes we have to listen to ourselves. We have to listen to our intuition because God has planted a seed inside of you that nobody else can see or touch or know. And when you're doing this and you start to open up and you start to blossom forth with some of these different ideas that you have, and only you alone can figure out how to execute because you alone have all of the expertise, He's not going to let you fail. And so we did. We started to move forward on the community, finally. I had been grandfathered in at this point to Mighty Networks. Now it costs quite a bit more to even have and launch a community at this level. But because I held on to it for so long, and I knew, I was like, I don't want to let it go because I had a Facebook group. And to be honest, I still have a Facebook group that's open and you can join in there. What I do enjoy is I have a platform that is completely owned separately and the content isn't governed by Meta. And all of my LinkedIn friends who don't do Facebook, who boycott Meta, can come in there and feel okay about it. You have to find what's right for you, whether it's school, whether it's Facebook, whether it's a Circle app, whether it's none of those. That may not be the path for you. And I see so many people out there following so many other people who are telling you this is the way you have to do it. And this is where my coaching practice, this is where my coaching training and studying and the work that I have done with hundreds and hundreds of leaders in Fortune 500 companies always gets me because there is no one single path for any one individual. There might be things that are common. There might be generalized advice, but you have to find what's right for you and you have to be willing to explore that and then also work with somebody who is willing to flex with you. If you're working with somebody who tells you this is the only way to accomplish them or something, this isn't the right person for you because there isn't a single path. And that's one thing that I really wanted to set out for myself because I don't feel like there is a single path for any one of us. We have to feel what's right for us, which is why we see people successful in multiple avenues. And I see a lot of noise out there, and I see a lot of people shouting that their way is the best way. And of course, for them, it might be, and it doesn't mean that it will be for you. So you have to know how to work with somebody who's knowledgeable enough to, number one, ask questions before they answer. Understand what your goals are before you go and execute. That's if you're working with somebody. But don't second guess yourself every single turn. There might be considerations to have, and that's where a good coach is going to ask you the right questions to make sure that we're thinking through all of the various scenarios that you might want to consider. And then you decide what feels right for you. I was on a call yesterday and there was a bunch of different business coaches who were in there. And there was a woman who had said that she was struggling with following through on her business. She was struggling with showing up in the way that she wanted to, or that she felt like she was supposed to every single day. And this is a woman who's a little bit older. She's got grandkids. She has other things that are happening in her life at a different level than some of the other women who were in the room. And I noticed there's this propensity that we have that we want to just jump in and start solving other people's problems. In fact, Michael Bungay Stanier talks about this in The Advice Trap, if you haven't seen his TED Talk or read his book. But we have to consider, and anytime that you're taking advice from somebody, you have to ask yourself, what is the intention of this advice? Because sometimes advice from somebody makes that person feel good. It makes them feel like they were able to help you. But it may not necessarily be the right advice for you, because you have to wonder, did they stop long enough to listen? Did they stop long enough to hear what you were really saying and explore with you? What's the deeper challenge? What's the meaning behind it? What's the issue that might be coming up? And I sat there quiet in that call, and I was wondering, there were a number of things that could have been the issue, but we certainly hadn't scratched the surface on that, let alone for me to come up with some advice on what to do. And I want you to consider that when you're thinking about, okay, that next move that you're going to make, that next step, whether it's launching your side hustle, leaving your role and really moving into your business, maybe you've built it up enough at this point, whether it's transitioning from one industry to another, or one career to another, ask yourself, who are you listening to? Are you listening to yourself? Are you listening to God? Are you listening to what other people are telling you that you should do? Whose advice are you taking counsel from? And does it feel in alignment for you? Does it feel right? Because if it doesn't feel right, it's not. Then it's not right for you. And I really want you to dig into that. So when we launched the community, I started to bring in, some other people too who I'd been working with, and I was really excited to have them a part of it and help me shape the community, because I don't want to create it in an echo chamber. So all of these ideas and thoughts started to rush forward for me, and we just started creating. And it was almost like magic, because what once felt like a blocker all of a sudden started to open up into blossoming into this whole ecosystem of training and different workbooks and weekly sessions and community and networking. And we're still adding and we're still growing to it. To me, it just seems like endless. And this is exactly what I had wanted. I didn't want to just feel like I was stuck in a box or stuck on this specific path, or here's the only way that you can grow a business. There has got to be other ways. And so I want you to ask yourself and consider, what feels right for you? Now, there's going to be things that are, advice that you might have to take that might feel scary. There's a difference between scary and putting yourself out there in a way that you've never done before versus doing something that feels unethical, doing something that doesn't feel aligned for you or quite right for you. I had been working with this other business coach for a little while, and I had to leave because I recognized that the recommendations that she was giving, number one, she discounted my ideas in terms of what I wanted to do in my coaching. I really wanted to help executive leaders and entrepreneurs with their personal brand, their leadership brand, weaving in leadership and branding. And I had been working on this for a number of years, but she was like, well, what do you want to be? You want to be a brand coach? You want to be a leadership coach? What do you want to be? You want to build a brand? You want to build a brand? I can never forget hearing her telling me this. She's like, you're wanting to help people in corporate or get out of corporate? And I'm like, I want to help them both. I'm not saying sometimes we do have to niche down, but it was the complete lack of acknowledgement for what I actually bring to the table. It was a complete lack of acknowledgement for my expertise, my skills, my background, what had been coming forth for me and how I could help other people. And it just really, when that happens and people are doing that, that's them returning to themselves. It's either returning to their own limitations or what they know they feel like they can help you in this portion of their wheelhouse. And it might terrify them to step outside. If you're thinking about making a move, consider, what is your expertise? Why do you want to make this move? What are you going to bring to the table? You have a wealth of knowledge. It may not make sense to someone else, but it will make sense to you because you're the one with the vision and you're the one who can see. Not everyone can see that. Now, I'm not saying, again, throw it all away and just go and do some planning, but you can plan and plan and plan and plan and plan forever and get nowhere. At some point, you're going to have to make a move. At some point, you're going to have to make a step. At some point, you are making a decision. It's either yes, I'm going all in, or it's a no, I'm going to give up on this dream. Right? Because time stops for no one. So what is it going to be for you? Really be careful, be mindful, guard your precious ideas, guard your heart. I'm not saying don't share with the right people, but if people are giving you feedback, oh, that's crazy. Why would you do that? That doesn't even make any sense. Maybe there's some guidance that you could receive in terms of how to refine what it is that you're trying to say. Maybe the words that are coming out aren't quite right. I know I've had to wordsmith because what made sense for me and how I, the language and the terminology that I used made sense to me, but it didn't necessarily translate or make sense to someone else. Sometimes we have to make those adjustments because we need to speak other people's language so they can understand what we're actually trying to say and accomplish. But that's communication skills. That across the board is something we're always going to be working on, regardless of what we're doing. But if it's a fundamental piece of what you're wanting to bring, map it out for yourself. Get in touch, get in alignment, go deep so that your conviction is what carries you through. I had gotten pushback so many times. Personal branding is for businesses. Personal branding is for corporations. Branding is for do you know how many executive leaders are now coming and saying they need executive branding? They need leadership branding. It's their insurance policy now because of all of the things and the shifts that have been happening within the market. And now when I go on LinkedIn, I see personal brand, personal brand, personal brand, personal brand. Have you ever noticed, like when you buy a car, you never noticed that car before until you buy it? Now, I'm not talking about your dream car. If it's your dream car, you probably did. But I know, like, say you go out and it's just a car. It's something that you need. It's a vehicle to get you from place A to place B. And now you're driving this car and everywhere you go, you see your car. That's true. Sometimes we don't see it out there because we're not looking in the right places. It's not popping up for us. Maybe the language is a little bit different. But don't be discouraged because, again, what you have inside and what you uniquely bring is going to be different than what someone else uniquely brings. It's not a competition. It's in service. And so one of the other things to consider for yourself is when you are finally deciding that you're stepping out, you're stepping into your power, you are going to go and do the thing that's been on your heart. Do it in service. Every time I reach out to someone else, sometimes I am terrified. And as time goes on, I get less terrified. But initially I was terrified. I was like reworking the same DM over and over and stressing about it. It's in service. I look at it now. Either I have a gift to share with them, or maybe my gift isn't for them. And either way, it's okay. We're not for everybody. Our gift may not be what they need. or it might. But if we don't share it, how are we going to know? And how are they going to have the opportunity to either say yes or really not right now? If you are operating out of integrity and in service and accountable to that piece that's inside of you, that calling, that purpose, it is a gift. And what you have to bring to this world is your gift. And by you not taking action, and by you pretending it doesn't exist, and by you stalling because you're waiting for the perfect opportunity, or everything needs to fall into place perfectly, or this isn't quite right, or my teeth aren't white enough, or my hair looks ridiculous, or I don't have the right clothes, or I don't have the right background. If you keep waiting for the right thing, you will wait forever. And your gift won't be shared. No one will be able to hear about it or see it or even decide for themselves if it's right, because you're holding your gift back from everyone else. They don't even get an option. You're denying them that. So I ask you, what is it that you're wanting to do? How are you wanting to serve? How are you wanting to step out in a greater way? How are you wanting to rise up? Because that's what we are here for. That's what this is all about, saying hello to yourself, saying hello to that person inside who wants to bloom, who wants to show up and say, hi, you didn't know this about me, but I also do this. I actually excel here. It doesn't matter what your corporate job has been. It doesn't matter your background. You can make up for things that maybe you feel are lacking, but what you can't make up for is time. That's one thing we can never make up for is time. So really ask yourself and consider, how are you giving yourself counsel? Who are you listening to? Who are you allowing to come in? Are they giving you the right advice? Sometimes it's not just the naysayers, it's also the people who are so eager to tell you exactly what to do and haven't even listened to you. What is it that they need in their lives in order for their advice to feel valuable to them? And that's a big differentiation between certain coaches that you can start to recognize and pay attention to. What's holding you back? What's getting in the way? What piece of this puzzle, right? What piece of the strategy, whatever it is, no matter how big, no matter how small, what is the piece that you keep getting hung up on? Well, I don't have quite this, or I'm not quite this, or this isn't what is that? And what can be done about it? Is it really truly necessary even? Or is good enough okay to start getting the ball rolling? And how are you feeding yourself? How are you feeding that calling, that purpose, so that you can act in service to others, so that you can show up and present the gifts that live inside of you? When you can start to look at those three things, then you will start moving forward in ways that you never imagined that you could. And it will be messy or scrappy or imperfect, but that's how it grows. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. And that's how we start getting the word out. And that's how also we refine. Nothing comes out perfectly. It gets better over time. You build upon it. And it's a very big distinction. The more you can pivot, the greater your chances of success. Thanks so much for joining me today. I so look forward to hearing your comments. I want to know, what is the piece in there for you that you feel is the most important? And if you haven't been a part of my ecosystem, if you're not on my newsletter, I'm going to put into the comments a link to join Powerhouse Insights, which is a weekly newsletter and blog, and it comes out every Thursday, where we're talking about leadership, branding, all of the things that are necessary for you to continue to rise up, refine yourself, figure out how you're developing your leadership value proposition, your executive presence, all of the things that we continually are refining in our lives. And then we have some amazing guests. I always say, but I love all of our guests who are coming on. We have our next one she is a powerhouse, and she is going to share with you how she launched her business in a very scrappy way and hit some really big numbers quickly. All right. Thanks so much for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your week. Talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning in to the Hello You Show. It's been a pleasure to have you with us on this journey today. If you found value in our conversation and want to support the show, please take a moment to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd also deeply appreciate it if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also enables others seeking inspiration and authenticity to discover our community. Until next time, keep embracing your story with purpose.